Good day. I'm going to discuss building structure under fire protection system. So this is actually the picture of the late World Trade Center. Building or structure definition in dictionary: an edifice for any use that which is built as a dwelling house, barn, etc. Building or structure, rural occupancies, places of assembly, educational occupancies, healthcare occupancies, detention and correctional occupancies, residential occupancies, mercantile occupancies, business occupancies, industrial occupancies, storage occupancies, and miscellaneous occupancies. Under the fire code, a model code adopted by the local jurisdiction and enforced by fire prevention officers within a fire station. It is a set of rules prescribing minimum requirement to prevent fire and explosion hazards arising from storage, handling, or use of dangerous materials, or from other specific hazardous conditions. It complements the building code, or we call it the National Building Code. Fire Code, signed into law by President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo, has signed into law a measure that outlines safety measures to prevent fire and to professionalize the fire service under Republic Act number 9514, or the Fire Code of the Philippines of 2008, was signed by Mrs. Arroyo on December 19, 2008. It is the policy of the state to ensure public safety, promote economic development through the prevention and suppression of all kinds of destructive fires, and promote the professionalization of fire service as a profession. The law said, the law shall be administered and enforced by the Bureau of Fire Protection under the direct supervision of the Chief of the Bureau of Fire Protection. Rule 2, Prohibited Acts under Section 11.0.0.1. Prohibited Acts and omissions. The following are declared as prohibited acts and omissions: obstructing or blocking the exitways or across to buildings clearly marked for fire safety purposes, such as, but not limited to, aisles in interior rooms, any part of stairways, hallways, corridors, vestibules, balconies, or bridges leading to a stairway or exit of any kind, or tolerating or allowing said violations. Letter B, constructing gates, entrances, and walkways to building components and yards, and temporary or permanent structures on public ways, which obstruct the orderly and easy passage of fire fighting vehicles and equipment. Letter C, prevention, interference, or obstruction of any operation of the fire service or of duly organized and authorized fire brigades. So later on our later discussion, I'll be discussing the fire brigades and fire volunteer. Letter D, obstructing designated fire lanes or access to fire hydrants, overcrowding or admission of persons beyond the authorized capacity in movie houses, theaters, coliseums, auditoriums, or other public assembly buildings, except in other assembly areas on the ground floor with open sides or open doors sufficient to provide safe exits. Blocking fire exits during period when people are inside the building is also prohibited. Prevention or obstruction of the automatic closure of fire doors or smoke partitions or dampers. Letter H, use of fire protective or firefighting equipment of the fire service other than for firefighting except in other emergencies where their use are justified. Giving false or malicious fire alarms is also prohibited. Under letter J, smoking in prohibited areas as may be determined by the fire service or throwing of cigars, cigarettes, burning objects in places which may start or cause fire. K, abandoning or leaving a building or structure by the occupant or owner without appropriate safety measures. Letter L, removing, destroying, tampering, or obliterating any authorized mark, seal, sign, or tag posted or required by the fire service for fire safety in any building, structure, or processing equipment. And M is use of jumpers or tampering with electrical wiring or overloading the electrical system beyond its designated capacity or such other practice that would tend to undermine the fire safety measures of the electrical system. Under Division 4, open burning, under Section 10.4.4.1, when allowed, open burning is allowed, provided that a fire safety clearance shall first be obtained from the city or municipal fire marshal having jurisdiction. Section 10.5.4.2, exceptions. Fire safety clearance shall not be required in the following. Letter A, fires for outdoor food cooking or preparation, provided that such fire is built and maintained in a pit fully containing the fire, or a fireproof container made of brick, stone, metal, or other fireproof material to prevent fire from spreading. Letter B, fires that are used for recreation and ceremony, such as symbolic torch, campfires, and religious or cultural fires, provided that burning must be attended and supervised at all times. Under Section 10.5.4.3, prohibition in open burning. The following acts shall be prohibited when atmospheric conditions or circumstances make the fire hazardous or produce excessive or unnecessary smoke, soot, odors, visible emissions, heat, flame, or radiation so as to cause nuisance, hazard, or to violate other law, rules, and regulation, issuances, and ordinances, specifically as provided under implementing rules and regulation of Republica 8749, such as number 1, burning using any materials in any quantities which shall cause the emission of toxic and poisonous fumes. Such materials include, but not limited to, plastic, polyvinyl chloride, polypropylene, paints, ink, waste containing heavy metals, organic chemicals, petroleum-related compound, industrial waste, ozone-depleting substances, and other similar toxic and hazardous substances. And number 2, burning or cause open burning of waste materials in the premises of any establishment, firm, company, government, or private entity, or organizations within the area of their jurisdiction, including recognized or unrecognized dump sites in any quantity or quality. Letter B, discarding burning objects or dropping any lighted match, cigar, cigarettes, or other burning substances on or near combustible material or in places where fire is likely to occur. Letter C, depositing hot ashes or cinders or smoldering coals or greasy or oily substances liable to spontaneous ignition into any combustible receptacle. Letter D, kindling of fire upon the land of another without permission of the owner, therefore, or his agent is also prohibited. Under section 10.5.4.4 requirements, outdoor burning, when authorized, shall be subject to the following requirements. The location thereof shall not be less than 15 meters from any structure, and adequate provision is made to prevent fire from spreading to within 15 meters of any structure, especially if the structure is made of light material. Letter B, burning is permitted only when wind direction and other meteorological conditions such as smoke and other pollutants will not present hazard to any public road, landing strip, navigable water, or have a negative effect on any building, structure, or sensitive receptor, or electronic equipment. Letter C, any residual fires and or smoldering objects that continue to emit smoke shall be extinguished each day at the end of the burning activity. Letter D, other fire safety measures necessary that may be imposed by the city or municipal fire marshal having jurisdiction. Under section 10.5.4.5, procedures for obtaining fire safety clearance. Application for fire safety clearance shall be filed in writing before the office of the city or municipal fire marshal having jurisdiction at least 2 days prior to the date of burning. Under section 10.5 4.6 responsible person for outdoor burning. Letter A. The applicant shall be the responsible person for the outdoor burning who shall be present prior and during the burning activity. He shall be liable for the consequences, damages, or injuries resulting from the said burning. Letter B. The granting of the herein fire safety clearance does not exempt or excuse the applicant thereof from complying with all other applicable laws, ordinances, regulations, and orders of governmental entities having jurisdiction. Under Section 13.0.0.7, penalties for specific individual. Against private person, number 1 is administrative penalties. The owner, administrator, occupant, or other person responsible for the condition of the building, structure, and their premises or facilities who violates any provision of the fire code or any of its implementing rules and regulation shall be penalized. First, administrative fine of not exceeding 50,000 pesos, or second, stoppage of operations or by closure of such buildings, structures, and their premises or facilities which do not comply within the requirements. Or third, both such administrative fine and closure or stoppage of operation to be imposed by the proper authorities, provided that payment of the fine, stoppage of operations, and or closure of such buildings, structures, and their premises or facilities shall not absolve the violator from correcting the deficiency or abating the fire hazard. Number 2, punitive penalties. In case of willful failure to correct the deficiency or abut the fire hazard as provided in the preceding subsection, the violator shall, upon conviction, be punished by first, imprisonment of not less than 6 months, nor more than 6 years, or second, by a fine of not more than 100,000 pesos, or third, both such fine and imprisonment. We will discuss fire and arson investigation under the Bureau of Fire Protection. The terms of references: arson is the crime of maliciously and intentionally or recklessly starting a fire or causing an explosion. Precise legal definition vary among jurisdictions, wherein it is defined by statutes and judicial decisions under PD 1613, amending the laws on arson. So here, there is an arson investigator under the Bureau of Fire Protection conducting an investigation on the scene. Fire investigation. the process of determining the origin, cause, and development of a fire or explosion. Area of origin: the room or area where the fire began. Material first ignited: the fuel that is first set on fire by the heat of ignition. To be meaningful, both a type of material and a form of material should be identified. Point of origin: the exact physical location where a heat source and a fuel come in contact with each other and a fire begins. Let us define important topics. BLEEV: boiling liquid, expanding vapor, explosion. Sealing layer: a buoyant layer of hot gases and smoke produced by a fire in a compartment. Char: carbonaceous material that has been burned and has a blackened appearance. Char blisters: convex segments of carbonized material separate by cracks or crevices that form on the surface of char, forming on materials such as wood as the result of pyrolysis or burning. Clean burn: a fire pattern on surfaces where soot has been burned away. Drop down: the spread of fire by the dropping or falling of burning materials. This is synonymous with fall down. Parchin Reconstruction: the process of recreating the physical scene during fire scene analysis through the removal of debris and the replacement of contents or structural elements in their pre-fire positions. Soot: this is the black particles of carbon produced ill a flame. Spalling is the chipping of or pitting of concrete or masonry surfaces. Spark is a small incandescent particle. Spontaneous heating is the process whereby a material increases in temperature without drawing heat from its surrounding. The process results from oxidation, often aided by bacterial action, where agricultural products are involved. So here is a illustration regarding fire patterns. Fire patterns are the visible or measurable physical effects that remain after a fire. These include thermal effects on materials such as charring, oxidation, consumption, or combustible smoke, and soot deposits, distortion, melting, color changes. So the burn pattern with fire from above and below. So this is actually an example of a fire wherein if you're going to look at this is actually a drop-down ceiling where the source of fire, if you're going to look at it, this is actually the source or the fuel of the fire. Eventually, when fire was already in action or the heat is already in progress, you could see that there's already an evidence that it have already distorted the light material. Spalling is the breakdown in surface tensile strength of concrete, masonry, or brick caused by exposure to high temperatures and rates of heat resulting in chemical process within the material. So this is already dispelling on sealing. Clean burn is a phenomenon that appears on non-combustible surfaces when the soot and smoke condensate that would normally be found adhering to the surface is burned off. This produces a clean area adjacent to areas darkened by products of combustion. So clean burn on wall surface. So take note, even especially in kitchen, even though you made use of concrete, but because of the oil and the sediments that were already clinging to the wall, it is evident that it can easily create here fire. So the clean burn is produced most commonly by direct flame contact or intense radiated heat. This is a photograph. On top shows protected area, while the photograph at the bottom shows how the chair was positioned during the fire. The appearance of the V-shaped patterns is created by flame, convective, or radiated heat from hot fire gases and smoke within the fire plume. The V pattern often appears as lines of demarcation defining the border of the fire plume. So this is actually a picture, typical V pattern showing wall and wood stud damages. So when you say wood stud, it is made of light materials. U patterns are similar to the more sharply angled V pattern, but displays gently curved lines of demarcation. So meaning the center is actually the fuel. So this is already the fire. And what encircles the fuel that ignites the fire is the perimeter of plume cone. So this is the intersecting plane, plan view of plume cone and intersecting plane. So as seen from above, and this is the elevation view of the plume cone showing the U-shaped pattern. So this is the development of U-shaped pattern. Truncated cone patterns, also called truncated plumes, are three-dimensional fire patterns displayed. This is the clean burn, the plume cone on ceiling, and the U-shaped pattern. And in general, this is already the plume cone. So the fire, this signifies that this is the fuel that ignites the fire. So this is actually the truncated cone pattern. Wall studs, direction of fire trouble. This is the source of heat. So wall studs showing decreasing damages as distance from the increaser. Saddle burns are distinctive view or saddle shape patterns that are sometimes found on the top edges of floor joists. They are caused by fire burning downward through the floor above the effective joist. The saddle burns display deep charring, and the fire pattern are highly localized and gently curved. So this is the picture showing the saddle burn in a floor joist. In many incendiary fires, when fuels are intentionally distributed or trailed from one area to another, the elongated patterns may be visible. Such fire pattern, known as trailers, can be found along floors to connect separate fire sets or up stairways to move fire from one floor level within a structure to another. Fuels used for trailers may be ignited liquid, solid, or gas. An LPG gas cylinder that suffered a bleed as a result of exposure to an external fire. Thermal effect on materials. So here is the unignitable liquid was poured on the rug. It soaked into the rug and fire scorched the hemp backing of the rug. So meaning this is already the cutted view of the carpet or the rug. The ignited liquid is evidently can be seen that have leached to the floor. So the ignited liquid also leaked through the padding. Photo shows the carpet section cut out and pulled back to reveal the scorching. So they made use of the oven to actually it serves as the starter. So this is the pulled bulb. The gases inside the bulb expanded when heated by fire. The bulb glass softened by heat pulled toward the heat source as gas pressure built and sought the weakest, hottest point on the bulb surface. The bulb may break at the apex of the pull if a gas pressure becomes great enough. The pull often points to the area of the origin. Indicators of possible incendiary fire. So here is the rubber gasket. It was burned away. This is already the heavy inverted cone. So usually this incident happens in a bakery where because of probably there are some leaks inside the hose that it have been ignited as the starter and there is a sudden explosion. So this is the evidence that the inverted cone, it reveals that it came inside this oven. So the incendiary fire in a bar, a disgruntled employee poured gasoline on some heavy rubber matting on the floor in front of this bain-marie refrigerator unit. This is now the clean burn. So the clean burn areas where soot burned away. So this heavy soot pattern on the stainless steel base, this was the origin appliance at the scene to have the soot deposit patterns. So this is the base of bain-marie refrigerator unit from an incendiary fire in a bar. Gasoline was poured on the floor in front of the unit on heavy rubber matting. This is the doors open during fire. Note that the classic slope towards the point of origin, creating a V-shaped pattern. So if we're going to look at it from the source, it has this V-shaped pattern inside this cabinet. That's why it is called classic V. So this is already the scene from some of those victims. So you could see that this is already the head of the person lying on the floor. This is the arm, torso. So you can even count this one as one. This is the second victim. So probably if you could see that because of the markings that was left untouched, you can see here that these are already the ashes that were actually and filled the room that caused the commotion of panicking. So meaning they didn't die because of burn, but instead they were able to inhale toxic fumes coming from the fire. This is how important that we should also design our structure that has proper ventilation and ducting works. How to become a fire investigator. So part detective, scientist, or you can even be engineer and law enforcer. The fire investigator represents the collusion of multiple careers rolled into one. It is the fire investigator who must explore, determine, and document the origin and cause of the fire. Establish what human actions were responsible for it. Then bring authoritative testimony to the courtroom to win a conviction in cases of arson. This is not a job for a lazy man. You have to be conscientious and have mind that likes to figure things out. You really can't take shortcuts. You must take your own photographs, collect the evidence, do not follow up investigations. In instance of incendiary fires, you must find the criminal. Many people use the term fire investigator and arson investigator interchangeably. They are not one and the same. An arson investigator will try to determine who is responsible for setting a fire. Frequently, arson investigator must be a police officer or NBI agent who does not have the background to perform a fire investigation, an area that is becoming increasingly grounded in the science and engineering of fire behavior. A fire investigator will attempt to determine the cause and origin of a fire. The job of fire investigator is complex, challenging, and intriguing, and requires a wide range of skills to perform it effectively. Every fire investigator has a personal perspective on what skills are needed most. Investigations are compromised, and often scenes are further destroyed by activities of the fire service, whose primary responsibility are to save lives and protect property against further damage. Fire scenes often involve all manner of public entities, emergency medical, law enforcement, and fire services. Passersby, owners, tenants, customers, delivery agents, all may have relevant information. Depressed and curious individuals attracted to large fire scenes can complicate investigations as they make security a necessity. A fire investigation is like a picture puzzle. Everyone involved with it has some of the pieces, but no one has the whole picture. It is up to the investigator to gather enough of these pieces together to solve the puzzle. Why investigate fires? Since Roman times, civil authorities have recognized the threat that fire represents not only to the well-being of individuals but also, and perhaps more importantly, to the welfare and safety of the community as a whole. In the day of wooden walls and roofs and straw covered floors, any fire could ravage an entire city. So it was in the interest of all concerned to investigate fires and establish how they began. Authority under Section 50, Rule 8 under Implementing Rules and Regulation of Republic Act 6975, which provides that the Bureau of Fire Protection, the BFP, shall have the power to investigate all causes of fires and, if necessary, file the proper complaint with the city provincial prosecutor who has jurisdiction over arson cases. Two main reasons why fire should be investigated. Number one is to establish the probable nature of incident, provincial, natural cause, or purely accidental, accidental, human error or negligence, intentional, legal, classified as arson, to prevent occurrence of similar incident. Who are qualified to investigate must possess investigational skills or techniques, must have an insight of human behavior, must have first-hand knowledge on chemistry of fire, and knows how to interpret fire behavior, must be resourceful. Common tools used for fire investigation: paper, pen, and sketchpad. Official department notebook, a good camera, tape recorder, 50 feet steel tape measuring tape, battery operated chargeable flashlight, any device to measure depth of char, gas mask or towel, globes, yellow line or fire line, evidence, collection tools, evidence container, evidence tag, an arson kit containing liquid, solid, and gas sampler. Another topic, types of fire or arson investigation. Basic investigation is to determine what property was damaged, causes, the reason, the number and extent of injuries or fatalities, the recommended corrective action to prevent reoccurrence. Technical investigation. There is suspicion of arson in connection with any fire. There is suspicion of negligence or violation of regulations. Next is the cause of any fire is undetermined to establish the most probable cause. Next is there is evidence of negligence or mismanagement of fire suppression or rescue operation. Last is loss of life or disabling as a result of fire. Law and jurisprudence. The law on arson in the Philippines is covered by Article 320 to 326 of the Revised Penal Code as amended by Presidential Decree number 1613 and Presidential Decree number 1744 under Section 50, Rule 8, implementing rules and regulation of Republic Act 6975, which provides that the Bureau of Fire Protection shall have the power to investigate all causes of fires, and if necessary, file the proper complaint with the city or provincial prosecutor who has jurisdiction over arson cases. Letter A. Elements of arson. Actual burning took place. Second, actual burning is done with malicious intent. Third is the actual burning is done by persons legally and criminally liable. Letter B. The law of arson. Article 320 to 326 of the Revised Penal Code define arsons, its form and penalties. Number 2, Presidential Decree 1613, amending the law on arson, defining the prima facie evidence of arson. Number 3, Presidential Decree 1744, amending the Article 320 of RPC, imposing death penalty to arsonists. But after the EDSA Revolution 1, death penalty was abolished then by President Corazon C. Aquino. Number 4, Republic Act 7659, an act to impose death penalty on certain heinous crimes, amending for that purpose the Revised Penal Code as amended, other special laws, and for other purposes. Number 5, Republica 6975 under Section 54, which provides that the Fire Bureau shall have the power to investigate all causes of fires, and if necessary, file the proper complaint with the city provincial prosecutor who has jurisdiction over the case. Special aggravating circumstances in arson, Section 4, PD 1613. Committed with intent to gain. So, meaning it was committed to gain because probably there is an insurance involved. Committed for the benefit of another. So, meaning it was intentionally burned because they hired someone to do the works for them. Number 3 is if the offender is motivated by spite of hatred towards the owner or occupants of the property burned. So there are cases that when there was actually a leasing, so the landowner forced the leasing to vacate the premise. Now what the leasing did was to burn the apartment if committed by a syndicate. So these are the reasons why an arson committed the crime. If it is planned and carried out by a group of 3 or more persons, it is now what we call syndicate. Methods of proof of arson. Corpus delicti is the fact that a crime has been committed. The following must show it: burning, that there was fire that may be shown by the direct testimony of complaint. Fireman responding to the crime. Other eyewitness. Burned parts of the building may also indicate location. Criminal design must show that it was willfully and intentionally done. The presence of incendiary device, flammable such as gasoline and kerosene, may indicate that the fire is not accidental. Evidence of intent. When valuables were removed from the building before the fire. Ill feeling between the accused and the occupants of the building burned. Absence of effort to put out the fire and such other indications. Prima facie evidence of arson. If the fire simultaneously in more than one part of the building or establishment. If a substantial amount of flammable substance or materials are stored within the building, not necessary in the business of the offender or for household use. If the gasoline, kerosene, petroleum, or other flammable or combustible substance or material soaked therewith or containers thereof, or any mechanical, electrical, chemical, or electronic contrivance designed to start a fire or ashes or traces of any of the foregoing are found in the ruins or premises of the burned building or property.